Welcome to BattleCore Stories, the channel where we bring you the most powerful war stories, legendary battles, and moments that changed world history forever. Here, we don't just talk about wars, we take you inside them, inside the fear, the sacrifice, and the decisions that reshaped the world. Today's story is not just about a battle. It is about obsession, survival, and a city that refused to surrender. This is the story of the Battle of Stalingrad. In 1942, the future of humanity balanced on the ruins of one city. A city burning day and night. A city where survival meant fighting for every room, every staircase, every breath. If this city fell, Nazi Germany would control the heart of the Soviet Union. If it survived, the course of World War II would change forever. That city was Stalingrad. By the middle of World War II, Adolf Hitler seemed unstoppable. German armies had crushed Poland, France, and much of Europe. Millions believed Nazi Germany could not be defeated. In June 1941, Hitler launched Operation Barbarossa, the invasion of the Soviet Union. It was the largest invasion in human history. At first, the German advance was terrifyingly fast. Entire Soviet armies were destroyed. Cities fell one after another. But by 1942, Hitler wanted more than victory. He wanted domination. Stalingrad was not just another city. It stood on the banks of the Volga River, a vital supply route for the Soviet Union. Factories there produced tanks, weapons, and ammunition. But more importantly, the city carried a name loaded with meaning. Stalin. To Hitler, capturing Stalingrad was personal. Destroying a city named after his enemy would break Soviet morale and prove German superiority to the world. To Joseph Stalin, losing Stalingrad would be a humiliation he could not accept. This was no longer just a military target. It was a symbol. In the summer of 1942, Hitler launched Operation Blue. Its goals were ambitious. Capture vital oil fields in the Caucasus, cut Soviet supply lines, deliver a decisive blow to end the war in the East. At the center of this plan stood the German Sixth Army, led by General Friedrich Paulus. Confident and experienced, Paulus marched towards Stalingrad, believing the city would fall quickly. The Luftwaffe began massive bombing raids. Entire neighborhoods were wiped out. Thousands of civilians were killed. Stalingrad was turned into rubble. But Hitler had made a deadly mistake. The destruction of Stalingrad did not weaken Soviet resistance. It strengthened it. The broken buildings, collapsed factories, and twisted metal created a nightmare battlefield. German tanks could barely move. Artillery lost its effectiveness. Airstrikes became useless in the chaos. What followed was not a traditional battle. It was something far worse. German soldiers called. The fighting Rattenkrieg, Rat War. Combat happened inside shattered homes. Inside factories like the Red October and tractor factory, in basements, stairwells, and tunnels. A single building could change hands multiple times in one day. Sometimes soldiers fought with rifles, sometimes with grenades, sometimes with knives. There were moments when enemies were separated by a single wall. This was war at point-blank range. As German forces pushed deeper into the city, Stalin issued one of the harshest commands in military history: not one step back. Retreat without orders was punishable by death. Fear stood behind every Soviet soldier. But something else stood there too, a determination born. From desperation, they knew that if Stalingrad fell, there would be nowhere left to run. General Vasily Chuikov, commander of Soviet forces in the city, adopted a brutal strategy. He ordered his men to fight as close to the Germans as possible, so close that German air power and heavy artillery could not be used without killing their own soldiers. This strategy turned every street into a battlefield and every ruin into a fortress. Snipers became legends. Among them was Vasily Zaitsev, whose deadly accuracy spread fear through German ranks. But every gain came at a terrible price. Every day, thousands of Soviet reinforcements crossed the Volga River. Under relentless fire, boats were destroyed mid-crossing. Many soldiers drowned or were killed. Before even reaching land, weapons were scarce. Sometimes the soldiers shared one rifle. One carried the weapon, the other carried ammunition. If the man with the rifle died, the other picked it up and continued fighting. Survival depended on luck, courage, and sheer will. As weeks passed, the weather began to change. Cold winds swept through the ruins. Snow started to fall. German soldiers believed winter would finish the exhausted Soviets. They believed victory was only days away. But while German troops fought street by street, the Soviet High Command was preparing something massive, something unexpected, something that would shock the world. German soldiers were not prepared for the Russian winter. Many lacked proper winter uniforms. Boots cracked in the cold, weapons froze, frostbite spread faster than disease. Inside the ruined city, German troops fought for survival as much as for territory. They lived in cellars, holes in the ground, and half-destroyed buildings. Food rations were reduced. Warmth was a luxury few could afford. Still, Hitler refused to allow retreat. To him, Stalingrad had become a matter of pride. While the Germans focused on capturing the last fragments of the city, the Soviet High Command was planning something far greater. Generals Georgy Zhukov and Alexander Vasilevsky studied the battlefield carefully. They noticed something critical. The strongest German forces were trapped inside the city, but their flanks, the sides protecting them, were weak. Those flanks were defended not by elite German units, but by Romanian, Hungarian, and Italian troops, poorly equipped and stretched thin. This weakness would decide the fate of the entire battle. On the morning of November 19, 1942, the frozen silence was shattered. Thousands of Soviet artillery guns opened fire at once. The ground shook. The sky turned black with smoke. This was the beginning of Operation Uranus. Instead of attacking Stalingrad directly, Soviet forces struck the weak flanks north and south of the city. The assault was overwhelming. Romanian defenses collapsed almost immediately. Soviet tanks poured through the gaps like a flood. Within days, the unthinkable happened. On November 23, 1942, Soviet forces linked up west of Stalingrad. The German Sixth Army was surrounded. More than 300,000 Axis soldiers were now trapped inside a giant pocket of ruins, snow, and death. The hunters had become the hunted. German soldiers could hardly believe it. They had come to conquer a city. Now they were prisoners of it. German generals immediately urged a breakout. They believed there was still time to escape. But Hitler refused. He ordered the Sixth Army to hold its ground. He promised that supplies would be delivered by air. He believed the Luftwaffe could keep the army alive. This decision would cost hundreds of thousands of lives. The Luftwaffe simply did not have enough aircraft. Weather conditions were brutal. Soviet fighters shot down supply planes. Only a fraction of the needed food, fuel, and ammunition reached the trapped army. Hunger began to spread. Inside the encirclement, conditions quickly became unbearable. Daily food rations were reduced to almost nothing. Soldiers slaughtered horses for meat. When horses were gone, they ate dogs, then anything they could find. Wounded soldiers lay untreated. Hospitals lacked medicine, heat, and supplies. Frostbite claimed fingers, toes, and limbs. Some soldiers froze to death in their sleep. Morale collapsed. Yet Hitler continued to demand resistance. German radio broadcasts spoke of heroism and victory. Reality was far darker. A relief attempt, Operation Winter Storm, was launched to break the encirclement. For a brief moment, hope returned. But the Soviet defense held strong. The relief force was stopped. The Sixth Army was alone. By January 1943, Stalingrad had become a vast graveyard. Shelling never stopped. Snow was stained dark with blood. The ruins echoed with the sounds of suffering. German soldiers knew the end was near. Many wrote final letters home. Others simply waited. General Friedrich Paulus was promoted to Field Marshal by Hitler, a clear signal that he was expected to die rather than surrender. But Paulus chose life on January 31st, 1943. Paulus surrendered the southern pocket of the encirclement. On February 2nd, 1943, the remaining German forces laid down their weapons. The Battle of Stalingrad was over. An entire German army had been destroyed. It was the greatest defeat Nazi Germany had ever suffered. News of the surrender spread quickly across Europe. The myth of German invincibility collapsed. For the first time, the world believed Hitler could be defeated. In the Soviet Union, Stalingrad became a symbol of survival and sacrifice. A city that had refused to die. But the true impact of this battle went far beyond one city and far beyond one war. The surrender of the German Sixth Army at Stalingrad in February 1943 marked more than a military defeat. It was a psychological blow to the Nazi regime. Up until this point, Hitler's armies had seemed unstoppable. Europe was under German control, and millions feared that Germany could dominate the world. But Stalingrad proved something profound. Even the most formidable army could be defeated. The war in Europe was now reversible. The human cost of Stalingrad was unimaginable. Soviet casualties, over 1 million dead or wounded. German and Axis casualties, around 850,000 dead, wounded, or captured civilians. Tens of thousands killed. Entire neighborhoods destroyed, entire generations were lost. Children grew up without fathers. Families disappeared. The physical and emotional scars would last a lifetime. But the devastation was not meaningless. It was the foundation of a turning point. The defeat shattered Hitler's aura of invincibility. For the first time, Allied nations truly believed that victory was possible. The Soviet Union, once on the defensive, now took the strategic initiative. Soviet forces began advancing westward, reclaiming lost territory. The Red Army's reputation as an unstoppable force grew worldwide. The battle also shifted political power. The Soviet Union became recognized as a superpower post-war negotiations. Borders and the Cold War were influenced by the strength displayed at Stalingrad. Nations realized that total war could be fought and won through strategy, resilience, and sacrifice. Stalingrad did not just change the course of the Eastern Front. It changed global history. Stalingrad was a masterclass in strategy. 1. Urban warfare favors defenders. Ruins became weapons, turning buildings into traps. 2. Encirclement can destroy even the strongest forces. Operation Uranus demonstrated that exploiting weak flanks can change outcomes. 3. Morale is as important as firepower. Stalin's not one step back order, combined with extreme determination, turned ordinary soldiers into legends. These lessons are studied in military academies even today. Commanders around the world still analyze Stalingrad as a case study in resilience, strategy, and adaptation. The Battle of Stalingrad also gave the world unforgettable stories of courage. Vasily Zaitsev, the sniper who eliminated hundreds of enemy soldiers, became a symbol of precision, patience, and fearlessness. Soviet soldiers crossing the freezing Volga River daily under constant fire, risking everything to reinforce the city. German soldiers trapped in the pocket, fighting against starvation and frostbite, demonstrating endurance even in defeat. These personal stories remind us that war is not just about numbers or territory. It is about human will, sacrifice, and endurance against overwhelming odds. Stalingrad's legacy extends far beyond the battle itself. The city, later renamed Volgograd, became a symbol of resistance and survival. Museums, memorials, and documentaries honor the courage of soldiers and civilians alike. The battle reshaped global military thought, political boundaries, and the understanding of war's human cost. Every major decision in modern warfare, from urban combat to encirclement tactics, carries lessons learned from Stalingrad. The surrender of the Sixth Army marked a profound shift. Germany was no longer invincible. The Allies gained hope and momentum. The Red Army moved west, eventually liberating Eastern Europe. The post-war order, including the rise of the Soviet Union as a superpower, was influenced by this single battle. Stalingrad proved that even in the darkest hour, resistance matters. Even when a city is in ruins, courage can reshape history. The Battle of Stalingrad was more than a fight for a city. It was a fight for the soul of a nation and the future of the world. It showed the cost of war, the value of strategy, and the enduring strength of human will. And it reminded the world of one undeniable truth. Even the strongest can fall. Even the oppressed can rise. Even a city in ruins can change history. This is BattleCore Stories, where every story of war is a story of courage, sacrifice, and the moments that shaped our world.